Projectiles slammed into the torsos of the human soldiers, burning holes clean through their armor. Yet the warriors kept charging forward, unfazed, taking aim with their blaster rifles and cutting down the alien attackers. The footage ended. Dennis stared at the screen, mouth agape. Humans were supposed to be dead the instant that experimental Hazari weapon struck them. But they had survived. And now, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Dennis leaned back in the cold metal chair of the dimly lit, cramped conference room, buried deep in the bowels of a remote space station. Across the table, the jittery, grey-skinned Xenos tapped his long, bony fingers on the table. "You see the gravity of the situation," Xenos said in his raspy voice, black eyes darting around. The Hazari were already a formidable military power. With this weapon that neutralizes all opposition except humans, they'll steamroll across the stars, conquering or killing as they please, unless you stop them. Dennis ran a hand through his graying hair. The ex-military man turned mercenary had seen his share of combat over the decades, but nothing like this. "You want me to infiltrate their most guarded weapons facility alone and steal the plans for this thing? So the Council can what, make some sci-fi magic bullet to counter it?" "Precisely. We need to understand how it works if we have any hope of survival. You're the best infiltrator and tech expert we have, and you're human. If you're caught, you have a chance of living. Anyone else would be killed on the spot." Dennis sighed. Another impossible job. But trillions of lives were on the line, and truthfully the challenge excited him. He leaned forward, a glint in his eye. "I'll need a ship, weapons, codes to get me close to the facility. You get me those? I'm in." Xenos flashed a relieved smile. He slid a data chip across the table. "It's all there. You leave in one standard day. Meet your contact on Zorix Prime. She'll get you situated planetside near the facility." He stood, extending a spindly hand. "Thank you, Dennis. The fate of the galaxy rests on your shoulders. Don't let us down." Dennis took the outstretched hand, shaking it firmly. He pocketed the chip. One day to prepare for a suicidal mission into the heart of the Hazari's most secure base, to steal plans for a weapon that could make them unstoppable. With the future of trillions in the balance, he allowed himself a small smile. Just another day in the life of Dennis Freeman. Time to get to work. Dennis slipped into the Hazari Weapons Research Facility, disguised as a maintenance worker, his heart pounding as he made his way deeper into the complex. The sterile white halls seemed to close in around him as he walked, ears straining for any sign of danger. He nearly jumped out of his skin when he heard voices approaching, quickly ducking into a side room. Pressing his ear to the door, Dennis overheard two Hazari scientists discussing the weapon in hushed tones. "The key is the genetic sequence," one said. "It targets a specific code found in all known sentient species, except for those pesky humans." Dennis's blood ran cold. A weapon that could kill all non-human life. The implications were staggering. He waited for the scientists to pass before slipping out and hurrying to the central database. His fingers flew over the keys as he downloaded the weapon schematics, heart in his throat. Almost there. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed as a robotic voice announced, "Intruder alert, all personnel to battle stations." Dennis cursed, yanking the data drive from the console. He sprinted for the exit, only to skid to a halt as a hulking Hazari guard blocked his path. The guard raised a sleek silver weapon, aiming it at Dennis's chest. "Surrender, human." Dennis raised his hands, mind racing. The guard fired, a searing beam of red energy streaking towards him. Dennis braced for impact, but felt only a sharp sting, like a static shock. The guard stared in disbelief. Dennis wasted no time, lunging forward and grappling with the massive alien. They crashed to the floor, Dennis frantically trying to wrestle the weapon away. With a burst of desperate strength, Dennis managed to overpower the guard, knocking him unconscious with a blow to the head. He snatched up the weapon and ran, alarms still blaring. Dennis rounded a corner and nearly stumbled at the horrific sight before him. Several Hazari soldiers lay in smouldering heaps on the floor, their bodies vaporized by the very weapon he now held. The stench of charred flesh filled his nostrils. Swallowing bile, Dennis raced past them and out of the facility, the schematics clutched tightly in his hand. Once safely away, Dennis contacted Xenos on a secure channel. "I've got it," he panted. "The weapon plans, but Xenos, it's worse than we thought. It targets—" A burst of static cut him off. Then a deep, menacing voice filled the comlink. "Mr. Freeman, you have something that belongs to us." Dennis's heart stopped. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled darkly. "Did you really think your little scheme would go unnoticed? We've been aware of your plan from the start. Now, you have a choice. Surrender the schematics, or we unleash the weapon on every human colony in the galaxy. Billions will die." Dennis's mind reeled. Give up the plans and doom the galaxy to Hazari conquest, or refuse and watch his own species burn. The weight of trillions of lives pressed down on him as he wrestled with an impossible choice. Dennis's mind raced as the menacing voice echoed through the comlink, threatening the lives of billions, unless he surrendered the weapon schematics. His heart pounded in his chest as he grappled with the impossible choice before him. But deep down, he knew he couldn't trust the Hazari or whoever was on the other end of that transmission. With a heavy heart, Dennis made his decision. He couldn't hand over the plans, not without knowing more. He had to go off-grid, disappear into the shadows until he could figure out his next move. Dennis thought of the one place where he could lay low and regroup. The seedy underbelly of a distant space station, a hive of scum and villainy where questions weren't asked and secrets could be kept. As his ship docked at the grimy, dimly lit station, Dennis pulled up the hood of his jacket, obscuring his face. He slipped through the crowds of rough-looking aliens and humans, making his way to a dingy bar in the lower levels. The air was thick with the stench of cheap alcohol and the murmur of hushed conversations. In a shadowy booth at the back, Dennis found the man he was looking for. Jack Ripper Reeves, a grizzled human mercenary and an old friend from his military days. Jack's weathered face broke into a grin as Dennis slid into the seat across from him. "Dennis fucking Freeman," Jack chuckled, his voice gravelly from years of smoking and drinking. "Never thought I'd see your ugly mug again. What brings you to this shithole?" Dennis leaned in, his voice low. "Jack, I need your help. I'm in deep shit." He proceeded to recount the events of the past few days, from his infiltration of the Hazari facility to the chilling discovery about human immunity to the weapon. Jack listened intently, his brow furrowing as Dennis shared his suspicions about Xenos and the mysterious threat on the comlink. When Dennis finished, Jack leaned back, stroking his stubbled chin thoughtfully. "So you're telling me that this weapon can wipe out every sentient species in the galaxy, except us humans, and now some shadowy figure is threatening to use it on our colonies unless you hand over the plans?" Jack shook his head. "Fucking hell, Dennis. You don't do things by halves, do you?" Dennis ran a hand over his tired face. "I don't know who to trust anymore, Jack. Xeno set me up for this mission, but something doesn't feel right. I need to find out what's really going on here." Jack's eyes glinted with a mix of intrigue and determination. "Well, you came to the right place. I've got contacts all over this station and beyond. If there's a conspiracy afoot, we'll get to the bottom of it." Over the next few days, Dennis and Jack worked tirelessly to unravel the mystery. They met with informants in dark alleys, hacked into secure databases, and pieced together fragments of information. Slowly, a picture began to emerge, one that sent chills down their spines. They discovered that the Hazari were merely pawns in a much larger game. A shadowy organization, known only as the Syndicate, had been manipulating them and other races, orchestrating conflicts and sowing chaos throughout the galaxy. The Syndicate's ultimate goal, it seemed, was to destabilize the Galactic Order, creating a power vacuum that they could exploit to seize control. As they dug deeper, Dennis and Jack made another disturbing discovery. Xenos, the man who had set Dennis on this path, was not who he claimed to be. He was a double agent, working for the Syndicate all along. His true mission was to ensure that the weapon's secrets remained hidden, and that anyone who stumbled upon them would be eliminated. The weight of this revelation hung heavy on Dennis's shoulders. He had been played from the start, a pawn in a game he didn't even know he was playing. But now, armed with this knowledge, he and Jack knew what they had to do. They realized that the key to unraveling the conspiracy and stopping the syndicate lay in understanding the origin of human immunity to the weapon. If they could figure out why humans were unaffected, they might be able to find a way to counter the syndicate's plans. But they also knew that they were now targets. The syndicate's agents would be hunting them, as would the Hazari forces who wanted the weapon schematics back. They had to be careful, had to stay one step ahead if they were going to survive long enough to expose the truth. As they prepared to embark on their dangerous journey, Dennis and Jack shared a look of grim determination. They were two men against a galaxy full of enemies, but they had no choice. The fate of trillions hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who could stop the syndicate's machinations. Dennis gripped the data drive containing the weapons schematics, the key to everything. He slipped it into his pocket, feeling its weight like a burden he had to carry. Jack checked his weapons, making sure they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Together they stepped out into the grimy streets of the space station, ready to face whatever challenges stood in their way. They had a long road ahead of them, filled with danger and uncertainty, but they wouldn't rest until they had uncovered the truth and put an end to the syndicate's sinister plot. Little did they know just how deep the rabbit hole went, or what dark secrets they would uncover along the way. The conspiracy was vaster than they ever imagined, and the stakes were higher than they ever dreamed. But for now, all they could do was take the first step, and hope that they had the strength and the wit to see their mission through to the end. Dennis and Jack's investigation led them through the seedy underbelly of the galaxy, chasing down leads and dodging syndicate assassins. A cryptic message from an anonymous informant pointed them to a set of coordinates in uncharted space, promising answers to the mystery of human immunity. With trepidation, they set course for the remote planet. As they approached, their ship's sensors picked up faint energy signatures from the surface, hinting at a long-dead civilization. They landed near the ruins of what appeared to be an ancient city, its once towering structures now crumbling and overgrown. As they picked their way through the rubble, Dennis couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept up his spine. The air was still and heavy, and the only sounds were their footsteps echoing off the broken stone. Jack kept his hand on his blaster, eyes scanning for any sign of danger. Suddenly, a hidden panel in the floor slid open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Dennis and Jack exchanged a glance, then began to climb down, activating their flashlights. The stairs led to a vast underground chamber, its walls covered in intricate carvings and glowing symbols. As they stepped into the room, a blinding light erupted from the center of the chamber. Dennis felt a searing pain rip through his body, and he heard Jack cry out beside him. The light faded, and Dennis found himself on his knees, gasping for breath. Jack lay a few feet away, unmoving, a smoldering hole in his chest. Dennis crawled to his friend's side, desperately checking for a pulse. It was there, but faint. He looked around the chamber, his mind racing. The beam of light that had struck them was all too similar to the Hazari weapon, and yet he had survived, unscathed. As he explored deeper into the ruins, the carvings on the walls began to tell a story. This ancient species had faced an existential threat, a weapon not unlike the one the Hazari now possessed. In a desperate attempt to save themselves, they had engineered a genetic immunity, and passed it on to the only other sentient species they had encountered, primitive humans. Dennis's heart pounded as the realization sank in. The Syndicate didn't just want the Hazari weapon, they wanted the key to creating an army of soldiers immune to it, and that key was buried in human DNA. He raced back to Jack, applying emergency first aid from their ship's medkit. He had to get his friend to safety, had to warn the Council of the Syndicate's true intentions. But as he prepared to leave, a familiar figure stepped out of the shadows. "Going somewhere, Mr. Freeman?" Xenos asked, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Behind him, a dozen Syndicate agents aimed their weapons at Dennis. "I'm afraid I can't let you leave with that information." Dennis slowly raised his hands, his mind frantically searching for a way out. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and he was the only one who knew the truth. He had to find a way to escape, to complete his mission. But as the Syndicate agents closed in, Dennis knew his options were running out. He glanced at Jack's unconscious form, then back at Xenos. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for what was to come. One way or another, this ended here. Dennis stood face to face with Xenos and the Syndicate agents, his heart pounding in his chest as he realized the true extent of the conspiracy he had stumbled upon. Xenos, a cruel smirk on his face, stepped forward, his eyes glinting with malice. "You've done well, Mr. Freeman," Xenos said, his voice dripping with condescension. "But did you really think you could outsmart me? I've been pulling the strings all along." Dennis's mind reeled as Xenos revealed the truth. The Hazari's weapon, the manipulation of galactic politics, even Dennis's own mission, it had all been orchestrated by Xenos, a mastermind driven by an insatiable hunger for power. "Now," Xenos continued, extending his hand, "give me the genetic knowledge you've discovered. With it, I'll create an army of super soldiers, and the galaxy will be mine." Dennis's grip tightened on the data drive in his pocket. He thought of the ancient alien sacrifice, of the responsibility he now bore to protect their legacy. He met Xenos's gaze, his voice steady. "No." Xenos's face contorted with rage. "You fool, you think you can defy me?" He nodded to his agents, who raised their weapons ready to strike. In that moment, Dennis knew what he had to do. He reached out with his mind, tapping into the ancient technology that surrounded them. With a burst of energy, he activated the alien defense mechanism, a blinding light filling the chamber. The Syndicate agents screamed as the beam tore through them, their bodies disintegrating into nothingness. But Xenos stood firm, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. He had come prepared, a serum coursing through his veins that granted him temporary immunity. "Looks like it's just you and me now," Xenos snarled, lunging at Dennis. The two men collided in a brutal hand-to-hand battle, trading blows amidst the crumbling ruins. Dennis fought with the strength of desperation, driven by the knowledge that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. But Xenos was a formidable opponent, enhanced by the serum and fueled by a lifetime of ruthless ambition. They grappled on the edge of a precipice, the ancient city sprawling out beneath them. Dennis's thoughts raced as he fought, memories of the ancient alien's noble sacrifice, of Jack's unwavering loyalty, of the countless lives that depended on him. With a final, desperate surge of strength, he overpowered Xenos, sending him tumbling into the abyss below. As the echoes of the battle faded, Dennis rushed to Jack's side, cradling his friend's broken body in his arms. Jack's breaths came in shallow gasps, his life slipping away. "You did it, Dennis," Jack whispered, a faint smile on his bloodied lips. "You saved us all." Tears streamed down Dennis's face as he held his friend close, watching the light fade from his eyes. In that moment, the weight of his loss, of the sacrifices made, crashed down upon him. With a heavy heart, Dennis made his way back to the Galactic Council, the truth about the Hazari weapon and the Syndicate's plot burning in his mind. The council members listened in stunned silence as he recounted his tale, their faces a mix of horror and awe. In the end, they made a decision. The knowledge of human immunity, the power it represented, was too dangerous to be widely known. It would be suppressed, hidden away in the deepest vaults of secrecy. As for Dennis, he found himself a hero to some, a fearsome enigma to others. The weight of his unique genetic gift and the responsibility it entailed settled upon his shoulders like an invisible mantle. In the days that followed, as the galaxy struggled to heal from the wounds inflicted by Xenos and the Syndicate, Dennis knew that his journey was far from over. There would always be those who sought to unlock the secrets of the ancient aliens, to twist their legacy for their own gain. And so Dennis Freeman, the man who had saved the galaxy, retreated into the shadows, a watchful guardian ready to face whatever threats might come. For he knew better than anyone that the price of freedom was eternal vigilance. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.